why are you afraid? Have you still no faith? I think that's this passage from the Gospel of Mark kind of reflects the atmosphere, the climate, that we are living right now in Europe and in other places of the world regarding migration. We prayed for the people in Manchester, and that's another event that increases the level of fear, in our societies. I always say, let's remember that many other parts of the world and many other parts of the global south, have to live with this fear and with this violence every day, every day. And this is why also there are refugees and migrants. So, becoming a pilgrim people of God. I'd like you to look well at this picture, because then I'd like to say something about this picture. Well, just a moment. Look at it. What does it tell you? The outline. I will make some preliminary remarks. Then the good, the bad, and the ugly. The famous movie, I don't know if you are into Western movie, the spaghetti Western, famous, no? The music, no? Ennio Morricone. A pilgrim people of God is a world Catholic church. A pilgrim people of God remembers. A pilgrim people of God recovers its migrantness. A pilgrim people of God communicates its migrantness. And then, of course, Ecclesia semper migranda, Ecclesia semper reformanda. Again, the picture, it is telling us something about what is happening today, in Europe. The massive arrival of refugees in Europe. I think this picture has been taken in one of the borders of the Eastern European countries. I don't know, police, what would be? Maybe Hungarian, or no, maybe Macedonia, something like that. And there is this, this little girl, the little baby girl, looking at this wall of shields. And when, why are you afraid? Who is afraid here? I don't think the baby is afraid. On the other side, maybe there is some fear, and it tells us about a little bit about what's going on now in our continents, especially there where there is lots of immigration, and we are dealing with the issue of immigration and refugees. But it is also, in my opinion, also the image of the church. The little baby is, in my opinion, is kind of a picture of who we are in front of the challenges of today, in front of the challenges of migration. In my opinion, in front of this, vis-a-vis these challenges, we are still, like a little baby crawling, learning how to move, learning how to stand up, learning how to walk, learning how to become a pilgrim people of God. That's my interpretation. So I will talk a little bit more about that, during this presentation. Is there a timekeeper? Because I don't have my, yeah. After, please, 35 minutes, make a sign, and yeah, please. So why I didn't choose in my title Migrating Church or Migrant Church, but I used the term Pilgrim People of God, which has something to do also with, my Roman Catholic tradition, the language from Vatican II, the language by Pope Francis that I take as a reference person, as I say later. It is the church that goes forth, e.g. it is Evangelii Gaudium 20, that goes with, not just goes forth. It goes forth to go with, and to go also beyond. who we are right now. I make also the effort to reflect globally, from Italy, from Europe, but also consider the global, within the world that is, that is inside, Italy, the world that is inside Europe, and the world that is outside Italy, the world that is outside Europe. Let's keep something in mind, because there is lots of talk about the refugee crisis, and we insist on the refugee crisis, and everybody is worried about the refugee crisis. But here I say, this is just the tip of the iceberg. For years, immigration has been going on in our countries. And just now we are waking up in some of our countries, and we realize that we have become immigration country. We have become a country that are multicultural, multi-religious. So this thing about, this whole thing about the refugee crisis, again, it's just a small part of the of a bigger issue that is human mobility, that is migration in the old continent. When I look at that little girl also, I am being reminded that we have a demographic issue here in Europe. The main resource person for this reflection will be Pope Francis, or better, I call him by his name, Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Yeah. And why? Because many times he has told he has been very public about the fact that he's a son of immigrants. So it is not just, a case of a surprise that, it is interesting, he's a son of Italian immigrants. He lives all his life and ministry, etc., in Argentina. And then he comes to Italy to become the Bishop of Rome, a migrant bishop. The bishop, he said at the beginning, from the ends of the world. And that's why, this is one of the reasons why he has an unusual concern for migrants and refugees. His ecumenical outreach is well documented. It's in front of us. He goes from Pentecostals, to Lutherans, to Orthodox, to everybody. Why? Because he says in a speech that he gave to the U.S. bishop, he says, he called them to dialogue fearlessly, without fear. Again, the fear. Why are you afraid? For he's been with the people. People, that's the other thing. It is not only theologians or church people who understand him. Normal people, common people understand him. Why? Because I think that mercy is understandable, easily understandable. Tenderness is easily understandable, For his appeal to get involved with the reality, not just to look at it from the balcony. He says it many times in his speeches, just especially to young people. He tells them, don't just be there on the balcony of your life and look at reality, just passing by. Get involved with reality. Even uses he has a neologism in Spanish, balconear, which does not exist, but it says, balconear means, staying there on a balcony and seeing, Now, on a more personal level, I am a member of a religious order, the Missionaries of St. Charles, Calabrians. The founder, Bishop John Baptist Calabrini. This is not just, marketing or publicity, but it is important for me to say this, because it is a little bit the history of migration also. It talks about the dynamics of migration. Because this bishop, in 1887, founded my religious order to accompany and to work with and to minister with Italian immigrants going to the Americas, to Brazil and the USA. So we started as Scalabrini missionaries working with Italian Catholic immigrants, going to. And now we are working in 33 countries around the world with migrants, regardless of religion, regardless of nationality. Right now, that's a little bit of my story, because I come from a religious order that was founded to work with Italian immigrants, and right now I am working with mostly Muslim refugees in Italy. That's the dynamics, of migration. And on a more personal level, I was at the border between Mexico and the USA, in Tijuana for 7 years, working in a shelter for migrants, Casa del Migrante. This is a picture that I took. And then when I was preparing this talk, I said, where is that picture? I think I lost a couple of hours to find this picture. Yeah. And this is the picture of the wall that is there in Tijuana. I think maybe this part has disappeared. So it was in 1995, 1996. I went there, and there was this part of the wall where there was, welcome to the new Berlin Wall. I said, I have to say something about this since I am going to Berlin. Yeah. That's how a wall that now has come back, to haunt us, thanks to the person who is now, who today will meet the Pope. President Trump today will meet the Pope. Somebody was saying, I want to be a fly on the wall just to listen to what they will be saying to each other. Maybe afterwards he will come out and will say, we agreed on everything. Yeah. Anyway, to finish my preliminary remarks, another quote from a letter of Pope Francis, by Pope Francis to the Grand Chancellor of the Pontifical Catholic University in Argentina, March 3, 2015. And let's see if you can, identify with this idea of theology. Teaching and studying theology means living on a frontier, one in which the gospel meets the needs of the people, to whom it should be proclaimed in an understandable and meaningful way. At this time, theology must address conflicts. Not only those that we experience within the church, but also those that concern the world as a whole, and those which are lived on the streets of Latin America. Well, he was sending this letter to the people there in Buenos Aires, but to the streets of the world. Do not settle for a desktop theology. Your place for reflection, desktop theology. Do not set your place for reflection is the frontiers. Do not fall into the temptation to embellish, to add fragrance, to adjust them to some degree and domesticate them. I am reminded about the frontiers that I have seen, to the borders that I have seen. Maybe we want to embellish them, we want to add fragrance to them. Well, borders stink. Borders stink, I repeat it. Yeah. Even good theologians, like good shepherds, have the odor of the people and of the street, and by their reflection pour oil and wine into the wounds of humankind. The Good Samaritan. I don't know if you identify with this kind of idea, what theology should be, what kind of theology we are called to do in our Christian churches. Now, the good. Much good is being done in the field of migration. Let's start with that. This is the good, the bad, and the ugly. Church communities, centers that are welcoming, feeding, supporting, accompanying migrants and refugees, creating opportunities for encounter. We have many of those centers. We have many of those shelters. And all the churches have something, that is dedicated, to the ministry with migrants. I make another example. The humanitarian corridors organized by the Italian government together with the community of Sant'Egidio, which is Roman Catholic, the Federation of Evangelical Churches in Italy, and the Waldensian Church. I know that there are some Waldensian there. Oh, okay. Good, nice, yeah, see? And that is really a great, I believe that is really a great, initiative that has been taken by an ecumenical initiative, very important. Well, the Pope went to visit the Waldensian there in Turin. Families, simple families, they take in migrants and refugees, creating solid bonds of intercultural and interreligious solidarity and friendship. I know some of these families, for example, in Italy. You just have taken this decision in their lives, to be welcoming, but to make that welcome really personal, really close, really not close, within their families. So to enlarge, in a certain sense, their families. Another initiative that I think is very important and from which all of us all the churches can learn something is the initiative Being Church Together again, Essere Chiesa Insieme, a project which is at the same time a vision and a long-term process. This is also by the Federation of Evangelical Churches in Italy and the Waldensian Church. That is a long-term vision, a long-term process started by the Federation of Protestant Churches, again, in Italy. It is, from what I hear and what I have read, this process has started especially from the moment in which this church had realized that, a very high percentage of their members were migrants. So how do we include them? And it is a difficult process from what I understand. It is not an easy process. I say here, I go outside the European continent, and there is a whole, as an example, I see there is a whole current of reflection of shared parishes in the USA, in the Roman Catholic Church. Means shared parishes, it is parishes where there are two or more the predominant ethnic groups. There is not one predominant group, maybe the Anglos, the English-speaking, but there is also the Spanish-speaking, there could be the Creole-speaking, and it is on purpose that they say shared parishes, because they are sharing spaces, they are sharing, the structures, but most of the times they just live next to each other, not with each other. One of the interesting findings of these studies on shared parishes was that people spend more energy in avoiding each other than in encountering each other. I see that the English-speaking person, the Spanish-speaking person, I don't want to have troubles with this guy or with this woman. I go my own way, and we live in the same church, in the same parish. So next to each other, but not with each other. And many other initiatives, and good practices. Now the bed, from which I think we need conversion, we have to ask forgiveness. The churches, I think, are guilty of indifference, and I speak first of all about my Roman Catholic Church, and neglect. Often migrants and refugees are not considered in Christian discourse and ministry. We just forget, we are indifferent, they just, we go ahead in our ministry, in our lives, in our churches, as if these people do not exist. These attitudes allow fear to take over. Again, why are you afraid? Not only within society, but also within our Christian communities. They create a void that is filled by the managers and storytellers of fear, who shape the narrative of migration in a negative way. Invasion, catastrophe, flood, etc., etc. Some of the images. I tell you from experience, right now, most of the times I find myself, speaking about migration in schools, universities, and parishes. The most difficult place in which to speak about migration, migrants and refugees, are the churches. And the most difficult time is right after the celebration of the Holy Eucharist. I tell you, that's my experience. It is easier to speak about migrants and refugees in a school than in a parish, in a church, in a Christian faith community. Yeah. In this context, feelings and perception become stronger than facts and dialogue, and dialogue and interaction, become increasingly difficult and at times almost impossible. Fear takes over so much that people do not think anymore. It is impossible to speak about the migrants in a positive way. But I always say that I think the responsibility is ours. I mean, the responsibility it is of the churches. Why? Because we do not speak about these issues in our churches. We do not speak about what is transforming our societies in Italy, in Europe. And so people, where do they get the tools to understand and to interpret what is going on? They take it from some newspaper, from social media, from TV, from so-called experts about migration, the storytellers and the managers of fear. So in that void, if you do not speak about that, somebody else will speak. And people, even if you give them facts, even if you give them statistics, they say, no, there are falsity. That's lies. That's a pack of lies. So perceptions, again, feelings are stronger than facts. Another thing that is happening also in our church is that we welcome and we give material support, to immigrants and refugees, but there is no full integration. An Italian sociologist who has been studying this issue say, we are doing a great job, giving material support of first aid help to migrants, especially in time of emergency. Yeah? But then when we go and look, for example, at the presence of migrants and refugees in the pastoral council of a parish, we find none. None. So what's going on? The ugly. The ugly is when the fear becomes rejection, becomes hostility, and even violence. When fear poisons the minds and the actions of our people. Years ago, a politician from northern Italy was telling me that a pastor in his own place was punched by one of the parishioners simply because he took in a family in his church. Was really punched, sent to the hospital. This is one of the, but the reactions of people are becoming more and more, from fear, we are getting to hostility, we are getting to violence, We hear about, 20 refugees arriving in our community. No, we don't want them, because with them, comes the Islam, and then comes, whatever, and, these are bad people, etc. There have been really, really violent reactions against, for example, pastors, against bishops who have tried, to convince people, that this is not the end of the world, that this is the way we should go. Again, perceptions, are stronger than. And then, of course, there is division and tension among Christians, also leader who supports migrants and those who are against them. What is really interesting and I talk about the Roman Catholic Church, I think we have never had, a Pope who is so outspoken about migrants and refugees. At the same time, we have never had so different pastors, bishops, etc., who speak against that, who say, well, Pope Francis is right, but, he does not understand really what's going on here in Europe. Especially in certain countries. This is happening, especially in certain countries. Yeah? And then the issue of Islamization. All migrants are Islamic, and all Islamic are, all Muslims are terrorists. So they are our enemies. Yeah. That's another ugly, thing that is affirming itself, in our society. going back to what happened in Manchester, and also in France or in Belgium, etc. I think that at the beginning, there is always something. You see, after these events, these tragic events, say, you see, we are opening the doors to the refugees, and look what's happening. But that is not the problem, because these suicide bombers or these violent people are the children of immigrants, are the children of refugees. So they are people who have been, were born and raised here in Europe. So that's the question we should ask. Why these people are willing to kill themselves and kill other people for an ideology, for, I don't know, why would you go to the concert of this what was the name of the singer, Manchester, Ariana Grande, yeah? And kill yourself and kill, teenagers. And you have been living in that country, you have been, getting, what? In terms of integration, in terms of, inclusion in society, what's going on in our, what is our responsibility as churches? That's my question. Not only what's going on, and we are not guilty. We just, it's not our business. No, what is our responsibility as churches? So the Pilgrim People of God is a world Catholic church, and I start from the interpretation, of Karl Rahner, who interpreted the Vatican II as the first and still tentative church official self-actualization of a world church. Rahner, when at the end of the 1970s, he wrote an article and said, in reality, the Vatican II was really the very beginning of a world church, Yeah. But really the very beginning. We have a lot still to go. We have to do still a lot. And in fact, after more than 50 years, we are still journeying toward a truly Catholic church. And I am not talking about a Catholic in terms of Roman Catholic. No, I am talking about Catholic in terms of inclusion. Oh my God. And that the world is not far away. It is in our backyard. And here I say, something about this book by Simon Kim, a Korean American, who wrote "World Church in Our Backyard." And this is truly a Kairos moment. For our time, because this is, the human mobility migrants force us to be more aware of the fact that we are a world church. I have to go a little. We have to remember, we have to recover our migratory memory, and a fact that is both engraved in our scriptures and also in our continental and national histories. We have been migrants. We have been refugees. Pope Francis, when he addressed the US Congress, said, "We, the people of this continent, are not fearful of foreigners because most of us were once foreigners. I say this to you as the son of immigrants, knowing that so many of you are also descended from immigrants." We are not fearful. In fact, we are fearful. That's the problem. And then there is a Eucharistic connection to break the bread. Do this in memory of me. Here I have a picture of the baker of Kos, Dionysius Arvanikatis, who has become famous, because in this island, when he distributes bread to the migrants who are arriving there, he's breaking the bread. A Eucharistic, gesture, the Lord's Supper. It's happening there. So we have to recover this migrantness. And here, theologians such as Fredericks and Dorothea here, Nudge, it's okay, are rightly calling us to go back to the basic and ask the fundamental questions. Who is a migrant? And what is migration? I think we have to go back because these are concepts that are much more complex than what we think. And sometimes we take them for granted. But for me, there is another bothering issue. Migrant has become a dirty word, or almost a curse. To be a migrant, it's a curse. If you say to a person, you are a migrant, you are cursing him. You are saying a bad word. It is like a sickness from which people have to be healed, and a stain that is almost impossible to erase. So, yet our biblical tradition tells us that ours is the migratory faith par excellence. It tells stories about people on the move. It shows that faith puts people on a journey. It states that migrants is a synonym with being human and being Christian. So there is clearly a gap between this and the fact that we do not acknowledge it. This is our tradition, and then we do not acknowledge it, actually. And so we must make the effort to acknowledge and reappropriate this migrantness. I take this term from a recent article by Peter Phan, Vietnamese American theologian in the USA. I have at least two main questions regarding the communication. Are we communicating this essential quality of the Christian church? Are we doing this? I don't think we are doing that enough. And how could we communicate it? It is just enough, to go back to our biblical narratives, or we have to do something more? Do we have to look into the histories of our own churches and see how in the centuries we have dealt with this migrantness? We have to use our imagination and creativity to come up with other narratives that speak publicly about our being essentially hopeful, full of hope, pilgrims full of hope. And concretely, how do we communicate this migrantness in our ministries? And now the end, Ecclesia semper migranda, Ecclesia semper reformanda. And I'd like to begin with another speech by Francis. I was telling to some of the people I was with yesterday night that some of the most important speeches by Pope Francis are those given to the Curia Romana. So usually they are given, as a. It is the moment in which he wishes, a Merry Christmas to the Roman Curia. But it's not really a Merry Christmas, because most of the times, he reproaches them and he gives them, And in fact, in one of these speeches. But since the first speech in 2013, you go and read those speeches are really fantastic. Since the Curia, and I put the church, is not an immobile bureaucratic apparatus, reform is first and foremost a sign of life, of a church that advances in her pilgrim way. Again, the migrant church, the pilgrim church, of a church that is living, and for this reason, semper reformanda, in need of reform because she is alive. We need reform because we are alive. If we don't need the reform, it means that we are dead. That's as simple as that. Yeah. So if we believe, faith, faith goes, that is the opposite of fear in the Gospel of Mark, that we are pilgrim missionary disciples. This is an expression that the Pope takes from the document of Aparecida 2007 of the Conference of the Catholic Bishops in Latin America, and also from Evangelii Gaudium. So if we believe that we are the pilgrim missionary disciples who have been called to journey together as a people of God, as a church toward the reign of God, we will be able to change, we will be able to reform. Concretely, this means that we must abandon the attitude, we have always done it this way, in order to be bold and creative in doing our mission. And this is it is from Evangelii Gaudium 33. Pope Francis returns to this. In many of his speeches, says, that's enough with this. No, in this church we have always done it this way. That's the death of ministry. That's the death of mission. We cannot be Ecclesia semper reformanda if we are not, if we have this state of mind, if we. So what does it mean in our different contexts, in a world on the move, to be bold and creative in our mission? It means, first of all, to take into account people and realities to whom we have not been used to until now. migrants, refugees, cultures, religions, the margins of our society, perhaps to discover that you do not go to the margins to rescue anyone, but if we go there, anyone finds rescue. This is from a Jesuit, Greg Boyle. Because Jesus and the Trinity maybe is there, often in hidden and mysterious ways. Maybe we are not able to see this presence clearly, but it is there. I don't know. Sometimes it looks like God is absent, but God is present. So maybe he's present and then he's absent. You know, it's complex. Yeah. Our God talk theology, and more specifically our church talk ecclesiology, since we are talking about ecclesia, must be the expression of our God walk, of our following of Jesus, and of our missionary discipleship, again, Pope Francis, as we struggle to be boldly and creatively faithful to the gospel and attentive listening to and serving a world on the move. In other words, and here I end, our ecclesiology must be necessarily a migrant or pilgrim ecclesiology because it is the expression of the Christian community that walks in the here and now of history, hoping for the rain, and accompanying a pilgrim humankind to which ultimately it belongs. Because the church does not exist outside the pilgrim humankind. It is part of the pilgrim humankind. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Gioacchino. That was a splendid paper. And I know we had to hurry you along, but we got there. And now we're going to get further because we're going to invite... This mic isn't working. I'll have to use this one. We are now going to invite anyone who has a question to come and form a relatively orderly queue over here. And we will take your questions perhaps two at a time. So if you have a question for Gioacchino, now is the time to come forth.
I am Nekongo Peter, coming from Cameroon. I'm studying in Göttingen University. You use a nice illustration about a child. And your question was, why are we afraid? As you, Professor, we appreciate you. You are a member of the mission of the Scalarabian Church. It seems as if the question has been thrown. And then, what are your views concerning the churches? You use a child. You are a member of a particular group of people. Have you ever done a survey on that question? Why are you afraid in your own, as a member of that community, to begin as a child? Then you put it in a global perspective that most of the migrants are coming from Islamic background. When I look at the hate of Africa towards Spain, there is also a crisis there. Most of those people are not Muslim, they are Christian. Most of those people also, they are from Cameroon. So now, if you look at it the other way around, if you take that statement, why are you afraid? It means people can reason out that they say, yes, we should continue to go. We should not be afraid. That is another way around. I think can you please allow us try to elaborate how do we balance this? Because that they will say, okay, since that there's a lecture concerning don't be afraid, we can continue to move ahead as migrants. Thank you.
Will we take can you take two questions in one go? And then that would be good, yes.
Thank you for the good presentation. I'm Gerard Mutarubukwa from Tanzania, but I'm studying in Frankfurt am Main, St. Georgen. I would like to begin with a question with a migrant, because it puzzles me. With an experience from Tanzania, one time the evening sitting with my brother, it's around 8, that's when KLM runs in Kilimanjaro International Airport. You will hear, because my brother works in the tourism industry, he says, my brother, you hear that? Those are either dollars or euros landing. So don't worry, tomorrow we'll have something to eat. Then I land here in the airport. The questions I get, it seems I am a problem, so I don't come like the blessing the other way. So the first questions will be document, okay, then later, where are you going to and what will you do? And somebody who doesn't know that I'm here as a student, seeing me in the train, well, you think the way you said I'm a migrant, I am come here to cause the only problems, to destroy the land. That's my personal experience. So now the issue comes. When somebody migrates from, can say, the affluent world, it's not a migrant, it's either a tourist or an investor. And when somebody migrates from the, can say, developing countries, he has come here to cause problems and destroy the country, and it's called a migrant. Now the issue is to reconcile the two. Some migrants are running away from the bad weather in winter here to enjoy the sunshine, to maybe the climatical conditions. And for most of the people from the poor countries are running away from bad economic conditions. So now who is a migrant? How to reconcile those two? That's my question.
If I am able to answer your questions, if I understood them well, even let's start saying that even here in Europe, that's what I was trying to say with Islamization of migration. We believe that the majority of migrants coming here to Europe are Muslims. It is not true. The statistics say that the migrants the majority of the migrants in Europe are Christian. Even if I say, I say they are not the Christians that we would like to have. You know, there are Christians in a different way. In Italy, for example, I mean, which is mostly a Roman Catholic, country, to see, Baptist church, Pentecostal, and it's very, very, very strange. Even Orthodox, more or less, well, we can, but it's very strange. So they're not the Christians that we would like to have. And yes, I put it this way, and that, but even within the Catholic Church, and so within the Roman Catholic Church, you have, in a parish, you have a group of, people from Peru or from the Philippines. They have different ways of celebrating. They have different we were talking yesterday, popular devotions and saints, and they travel with their gods. The Virgin Mary and the saints, that is one of the thing in the Roman Catholic tradition. So, and that, makes people, get, they are afraid of that. That change, that's, it is strange to them. Well, the first time my mother saw people, clapping and dancing in the church, and the Pentecostal, charismatic, said, what's going on here? This is no longer a church, it is a theater. Because you have to be standing there doing, silence and just answering when you have to. So to convince people not to be afraid, of these differences, actually to appreciate this difference, it is a long process. But it is a process, I think, that we are, that maybe we have begun, but not yet. We are still, we are not really convinced about that. Not really convinced. I am talking about, and then it comes also the whole questions. It becomes even worse when it comes to Muslim migrants, as I said, Muslim refugees, because they are really they become the impossible subjects. I have to say another thing. I mean, mostly in Europe, and I am sure in Italy, the irregular migrants, the migrants who have no documents, are not the refugees, they are the domestic workers coming from Latin America, coming from the Philippines, Roman Catholic. I mean, the issue becomes more and more, complex. I mean, why are you afraid? And to guide the church to have this process of reflection and prayer and faith in order to accept these differences, it is a long, long journey. That's why becoming a pilgrim, I put it this way, becoming a pilgrim people of God. We are not yet there. We have just begun maybe this pilgrimage. Maybe some churches like the Waldensian, they have even more to say about this than myself, because there the percentages of people are, I mean, most probably 50-50, no? 50%. Yeah. 50% migrants and 50%, yeah. It's, I hope I have answered more or less your question. To your question, you are completely right, in Italy, we use the word to say people, to talk about, let me say, to refer to migrants coming from the global south, we use the word extracomunitari. Why? Because they come from outside the European community. Extracomunitari. So often we say about people, we don't say they are immigrants. These are extracomunitari, which is actually a term of exclusion. You do not belong to my community. You do not belong to the European community. It is interesting that this word, this term, is being used, for example, for Romanian migrants. Romania is now part of the European community, but it is never used for US migrants in Italy. Never. I have never seen heard that the term used, well, US immigrants, they are not part of the European community. They come from outside the European community, but we don't use that term. Just to underline what you were saying, it is true. And this is part, I think, of our colonial heritage. I am sure that, part of the problem is that. It is the people from the global south, well, those are the immigrants, and those are the bad immigrants. Those are the foreigners. Those are the people who do not belong. While the other, yeah.
Thank you. We now have, the queue is now closed, and we have the considerable challenge of getting 6 questions and 6 answers in the remaining less than 20 minutes. So if we can ask for pithy, pointed, and firm and short questions, and also with you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good day. My name is Krista, and I'm from Finland and from the Lutheran tradition. One of the challenges in my background is that the leaders of the church do not go to the margins. So the bishops do not meet the margins, and the last 2 weeks I've been pondering a lot about this quotation that one bishop used to oppose same-sex marriage in Finland was that we don't have real human rights issues in the West. So I ask and invite you to inspire us how to disturb the conform, those who are comfortable. What are the ways to tackle these issues and invite bishops to challenge their comfortable mindset, and especially because we as students are not in the same level as the church leaders. It's not even. So we are more vulnerable than they are because they have power and we necessarily don't. So I invite you to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take another 2 questions now, Tabitha. And then...
Hi, my name's Tabitha Moyo, come from Zambia. You talked about Christianity being a pilgrimage faith and the church being a pilgrimage. And looking at pilgrimage in itself, you also mentioned the fact that there are distractive elements, but also positive elements that comes into pilgrimage. And look, in light of this, I want to ask, where is the place of reconciliation of the past where it has been destructive, especially in its correlation and its intertwined with politics? And in order for us to go forward, where is this reconciliation? Where can we put it in this continuation of pilgrimage in the line? Thank you.
Thank you, Tabitha. And one more, Johan?
For me, no matter about mission and migration in Europe, but the problem for me maybe is about how do you aware about the increasing the growth of Muslim, significantly growth of Muslim in Europe, maybe 10%. How about this fact? And then I asked this one because the Islam is not our enemy, but the power behind Islam who make wrong direction Islam in our society, because I'm from Indonesia, and maybe in Asian and African country is very scared, very worried about what is behind Islam. Yeah, thank you.
Again, for the questions. Regarding the margins, we have to invite our leaders to take risks. And, you know, it's kind of difficult to do this. Especially, you know, when you are a student, you were saying, these are people, you know, in power. They are the leaders of our churches. Fortunately, it would be good, you know, to identify a leader, a bishop that has this courage, that is able, you know, who is willing to take those risks, you know, and to make this person, you know, take the lead in terms of going to the margins. Fortunately, I will say fortunately, in our Roman Catholic Church now, we have that leader in Pope Francis, because he's the first one to say that we have to go to the peripheries. And so that helps us. Not that everybody, you know, listens to him, actually. But that's what I'm going to say. In terms of the pilgrimage, you know, and what is the place of reconciliation in this pilgrimage of faith, and also in the ecumenical pilgrimage, in the pilgrimage of Christianity, I think it should be, you know, quite right at the beginning, because we have to. I believe we have to look at our histories and you know, ask forgiveness of each other for what we have done, you know, in the past. And some of, you know, we have taken some important steps in this direction. I am very, and I am, you know, I am very hopeful, you know, right now, especially within my Roman Catholic tradition, and also thanks to the leadership, to the speeches, to the gestures also of Pope Francis. So again, I go back to him. Now the significance of the Muslim within Europe and with. When I say that the majority of migrants in Europe are still Christians, I am not saying that the Muslim migrants and refugees are few. There are many. And, you know, the dialogue and interaction and, you know, the inclusion, the integration of this our Muslim brothers and sisters will be, you know, will be crucial for the next decades here in Europe. There are lots, you know, there are lots of difficulties and obstacles. I see them, you know, I see them in the neighborhood in which I am working right now with refugees, where there is a high concentration of Muslims, and because there are so many things. For example, I don't know if you find it. I say something very personal, but I find it disturbing the fact that sometimes, in our streets you find women with covering their faces, Muslim women covering their faces. I find it it's maybe, I don't know, maybe some of you have some good explanation about that, but I find it, I have no problem with veils. I have seen veils my whole life. Catholic nuns, Roman Catholic nuns. No problem. You want to use a veil, no problem. But when you start covering, that's just an example of the issues that we have to, deal with Then second, the intergenerational problems, because maybe young women want to live in a different way. They don't want to follow certain traditions.
Thank you very much. Friederike from Germany, studying here right now. Thank you. I feel that you've made a very important distinction in your speech between migrants and refugees. I feel that is a distinction that not a lot of people make, as every refugee is kind of a migrant, but not every migrant is a refugee. Do you think that we are appropriately dealing with that, not only in a church context, but like generally? Because that's a distinction that I feel is uncovered, like with general hatefulness in the debates.
Hi, I'm Jakub from Poland. And I might say that when it comes to the latest migration and refugee crisis, because of what's been happening in Poland, I might say I'm pretty much ashamed of being Polish, because of what's been said and what's been done by the government and by society at large, because we are a nation of migrants. Most of you, but well, all of you live in Europe, and wherever you go in Europe, we are there. We are predominantly Christian society. We are called the most Catholic society in Europe. We are the most homogeneous country in the area. We don't have Muslims. We pretty much don't even have any Arab, even Christian immigrants. And even though we have the highest, I might say the highest level of xenophobia and Islamophobia in the region. And even though I'm really happy what Pope Francis has been saying in this matter, and what Polish bishops, Catholic bishops have been saying in this matter, most of the Polish society might say, okay, well, we heard what Pope has been saying, but we are obliged to listen to him in the matter of dogma, but not ethics. And I might say I have no longer strength or any arguments to deal with this in the society. And do you think, can it still be a matter of the content-based discussion, or does it have to work only on emotions at that matter? Because that's mostly about emotions, like there's a fear growing, and there is all those, the managers of fear, as you called them. How do you think we can deal with them in such a situation? Thank you.
One more question, please.
Thank you, Professor. I'm Haji from Philippines. I'm studying now at ETF, Evangelical Theological Faculty, not in KU Leuven. Common and known. My question is, since you are working, is part of the Scalabrini missionary work, I know that you work for almost a decade with the migrants. I'm interested, how do you respond to the common dominant, perhaps, belief now that, because you mentioned about migrant brings their gods and goddess. Do you think that migrant or even refugees now revive the religion in the post-secular Europe?
Begin with the last question. Just to make to correct something, I mean, the Scalabrinian religious order has been working with migrants for 130 years, not for 10 years, for a decade. Yeah, it's a little bit older than that. And about reviving, I am sure they are. I think that it has happened to you to talk to some of these our sister and brothers who are migrants and Christian migrants, and they tell you, you know, that when they are kind of surprised, let's say, but in a negative way. For example, they come to Italy, they should be the Christian country, Roman Catholic country par excellence. They don't see that much faith, you know, going around. They go to churches and they say, well, the churches here are empty. There is nobody going to church. For them, for many of them, Europe is a place of mission. Yeah, that's we go back to the we should go back to that concept of mission. So yes, with their and especially with their popular religiosity in our at least in our Roman Catholic Church, they are reviving. This is happening. Well, this is happening especially in the let aside a little bit Europe, but especially in the USA. There is the Hispanicization of the, I don't know if I said it well, of the church in the USA. It is clear, you know. It is becoming more and more Hispanic, Latino church. And this, you know, what are the consequences of this transformation of the church? Yeah. Anyway. Yes, about the Polish was. Please don't be ashamed of being Polish. Please don't do that. You know, there is always hope. And I think you know, sometimes I am ashamed of being Italian. You know, when I hear some people, you know, saying, yeah. So, but I always tell myself there is always hope. I think we have to make the effort to find, you know, I mean, vis-a-vis this, the strength of emotions, perceptions. We have to find a way. We have to be creative. And I don't know what are I mean, I have no idea. I have no suggestions about that, except saying that we have to find the way of communicating, you know, these stories in a different way. We have to find the way of being creative and use our imagination to come up with different narratives, because now the stronger narratives are the negative narratives on migration. Yeah. Those are, you know, those take, you know, again, the managers and the storytellers of fear and hostility, you know, they have taken over. What can we do to come up with the different, I don't say counter narrative, you know, but different narratives about, you know, our being, you know, pilgrims, our being migrants, our being, you know, we have to make that effort, you know, and maybe you who are younger than me, most of you are younger than me, should help us to come up, you know, with these new narratives. And then those narratives, you know, it is not only about the leaders. The problem is really with the people in the pews, the people who come to church. I don't know. I have the impression that most of the people who come to church in Italy, who go to church more frequently, are the people who are mostly against, you know, migrants and refugees. That's, I mean, many times that's my impression. Yeah. Why is that happening? You know, it is not only about leaders. You know, we have to change from this change has to happen, this conversion has to happen from the grassroots. About the distinction between migrants and refugees, etc. We go back to the idea of, I mean, of the complexity. Who is a migrant? That is a very, very complex concept. You know, we talk about economic migrants and forced migrants. What is the relationship between these? Women migrants, men migrants, minor, irregular migrants. You know, there is a whole, you know, how do we, there is a big complexity. Internal migrants, asylum seekers. Well, we have to be careful about using our words, or at least when we use them, we have to explain why we are using them in a certain way. Yeah. That's.
Now, if this microphone works, I get to thank you. But before that, I have a couple of things to say. The first is obviously our enormous gratitude, Gioacchino, thank you for coming and stimulating this discussion.